Good morning. This is going to be the words for the win for the weekend of August 1st and 2nd, and the post for Saturday, August 1st. The gospel story today is about, in Matthew, is the first time that Jesus is going to feed a multitude of people with 5 loaves and 2 fish, or 2 loaves and 5 fish. I don't remember what it is, but it's 7, which is a sacred number. So that's the point. But it follows what intervenes between what we heard the last couple weeks about all the parables of what the kingdom of heaven is like, which I inadvertently in the post last week said was May, but it's really the month of July where we heard all those parables where Jesus is anything but, again, remember, anything but an either-or kind of a guy. Jesus is very creative in thinking, very non-binary thinking, unlike most of us. So what happens between those parables and what we hear today when Jesus is going to feed these people with 5 loaves and 2 fish is John the Baptist gets murdered, and Herod has him beheaded and his head presented on a platter at a dinner, which is the antithesis of the banquet that is going to follow now with Jesus feeding these people. Herod's banquet is the banquet of the sacrificial victim, and the sacrificial victims are always victims of violence that never bring peace. I mean, more violence does not bring more peace. Violence begets violence. Even today, we see that. So Jesus is going to hear about this, and he's going to withdraw. Not in fear, but in preparation, because in Matthew's gospel, the circle is getting smaller, and Jesus' destiny is becoming more important. But before that, a lot of things are going to happen. Among them, this huge crowd of people come, and Jesus heals them. Now, what does it mean to heal? Again, remember, we're dealing in the world of the sacred and the spirit. So we're not talking about, illnesses of the body. We're talking about illnesses of the spirit. And Jesus is moved with compassion by the illnesses of the spirit. Now, we're unfamiliar with that sort of thing, so we kind of dismiss that, and we either come down as literalists and want these to be miracles, what we think are miracles, or we dismiss it. But the illnesses of the spirit are real. I mean, they get manifested in lots of ways. One of the ways that they're manifested is in violence. I mean, Herod is a violent character. The woman he marries, his brother's former wife, is a violent character. There's a whole slew of violence there. It's not unlike the play Hamlet. Violence begets violence, ultimately. And our culture is steeped in violence. All these poor kids running around shooting each other, I mean, that's wrong, but that's part of a bigger system. I mean, who's supplying the guns? Where are the guns being manufactured? How do they get there? Who's profiting? Those are all illnesses of the spirit all around the block, with everyone involved in that. And we have little skill in dealing with that. In this whole episode of trying to make life in this time of COVID-19, we're all being damaged in the spirit. I mean, we are having trauma. I had suggested earlier, several months ago, that we will all suffer from some form of post-traumatic stress disorder, and that's real. And we don't have a lot of resources to respond to that. And I suggest now I've learned a new term. It's called moral injury or moral trauma. And it comes from, the moral trauma comes from us realizing that this disease is ruthless. especially with vulnerable people. It's ruthless with anybody, but it's ruthless with vulnerable people. And I can look at the news and see thousands of people being buried in Latin America or Africa or the Middle East, and know that millions of people are suffering from this disease, and that's a moral trauma. I don't want people to suffer, nor do you want people to suffer. We can get angry at all sorts of things to deal with our moral trauma, but at the end of the day, we still have the injury. Our heart and our soul is being injured. The ugly talk, the ugly actions, the disregard for public health that we see so apparent, those are traumas that are going to take a toll. The poor families that, it's increasingly unlikely, at least in my opinion, that kids are going to go to school. The tension and the stress that will be in families and in homes is going to be unbearable. And we do not have resources to help us deal with that. We don't have the inner resources nor the outer resources. I don't want to just be all gloom and doom. So to get it back to the gospel, but those are real issues. Don't minimize them. Those are real issues. But the gospel story is that they're in this deserted place. It's getting nighttime. People are going to be hungry. The disciples tell Jesus, we'll send them away so they can go into the towns and villages and buy supper or dinner and find a place to stay, which is completely improbable with the number of people you're dealing with. So this is a story to get a point across, a Jesus teaching, not just any point, but a Jesus teaching. And Jesus says, well, what do you have? And they said, well, you have 5 loaves and 2 fish. And he said, well, you feed them. And then they say, well, we can't. And then Jesus says, give me the 5 loaves and the 2 fishes. And he takes them and he gives thanks to his Father. And then they distribute them. And they had 12 baskets left over, which again, 12 is a spiritual, mystical, mysterious number. They had 12 baskets left over. And we hear the storyteller, Matthew, tells us there were 5,000 men alone, which is improbable, but that's the story, that all these people are fed. And the point of that is, first of all, one point that it isn't, is that Jesus can change 5 loaves and 2 fishes to feed 5,000 people. If that were the case, and we're seeing what we're seeing in this pandemic, I can't understand how anyone could take Jesus seriously or Christianity seriously. So, because that would be just hypocrisy of the highest order. It would be blasphemy. So the storyteller is telling us something else there. And I think what he's telling us is that we need to recognize what we have, not in some kind of cavalier or cynical, be thankful with what you got. Not that. That's not what God does. God does not, diss us and play with us. But to take what we are, to recognize our true identity, to take that. This is what we have. This is what we are, and to recognize that and acknowledge that. That's hard to do. It's very hard to do because we live with so many veneers and so many masks and so many postures, and we respond to the expectations of other people in so many ways. But what this teaching is saying is take what you are and acknowledge it. That's a lifetime of work, by the way. This is what I am in God's love. This is what I am in God's love. I'm not old, I'm not young, I'm not sick, I'm not well, I'm not smart, I'm not good, I'm not bad. This is what I am in God's love. I'm God's manifestation in this time, in this place. To myself, first of all, and then to others. And to acknowledge that, embrace that, give thanks for it, and to share it. Those are the Eucharistic gestures. Take, give thanks, break, and share. That's the Eucharistic gesture. And this is the first Eucharistic narrative, if you will, in Matthew's Gospel. There'll be others, but this is the first one. And it's the exact opposite of the meal that Herod had just preceding this, where violence prevails. It's the exact opposite of the temple worship at the time of Jesus, when animals being killed were the standard of sacrifice. Jesus wants no more bloodshed. This is a story for us to ponder And in these days of trauma and hurt and being denied so many things, we need to see who we are. It's going to be crucial going forward, absolutely crucial going forward. And just to point out, the first person in the New Testament that does the taking, the breaking, and the giving thanks, and then the pouring forth is Mary Magdalene. When she's going to anoint Jesus' feet, she takes that oil and she breaks the jar and she gives thanks. Those are the gestures, the taking, knowing what we are, knowing what the gift is, giving thanks for the gift, then breaking it to share it. That's what Jesus does with his own body and with his own blood. You might be interested. The picture above me there is a painting that little Cal Bowman gave me for Christmas. Oh God, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 years ago maybe. Cal's going to be a 9th grader, maybe an 8th grader, I think. 8th grader. And I have a picture in my kitchen from his older brother, Leo. And the picture on the wall over there is a photo I took of the courtyard of the Louvre. Well, you can't see it there. A photo of the courtyard of the Louvre in Paris, which I just keep up there to make me smile every once in a while these days. And I hope you have pictures that make you smile every once in a while these days. Peace be with you.